On May 22nd, there was a terrorist attack by a Muslim jihadist against an Ariana Grande concert and the people within the concert. About 22 people were killed, and Ariana Grande said that we must not let hate win. So I don't. That's pretty much the response of the Western leaders. I think that the leaders of the Western countries in Europe, except for a few countries like Poland and Slovenia, have basically resigned themselves that there's going to be a terrorist attacks. And I think what they fail to realize is that there is a strategy against the Western world carried out by Muslim extremists. There are hundreds of millions of Muslim extremists throughout the world, maybe more, and they are intent on spreading their religion through any means possible. So violence is kind of just one of the means. Another means is settling in different countries. You'll notice if you go to, for instance, I've been to Paris, and I've noticed in Muslim communities there's a lack of assimilation that is going on. You still see a lot of women in the burqas and in a state of submission. Is atypical of French culture. Now, French culture is probably looser than American culture or any other Western culture. I mean, it's kind of a live and let live culture. But if you think that in this war against extremist Muslims, if you think that the enemy is hate, you're going to lose. If you can't name your enemy, then you will lose. And I think that there is a lack of foresight on the left. They think that terrorism is a result of poverty. It's not a result of poverty. There are other countries that are poor, that are not Muslim, where terrorism was not an issue. Terrorism is an escape. I think there's a level of among terrorists. There's a level of desire for celebrity. If you blow yourself up and you kill a lot of Westerners, I think for some, if for some people, will view those people as heroes, and that individual's face will be plastered everywhere across the internet and across the news, and in some way they're like, they know they're not going to achieve greatness on their own. I mean, they're not going to do anything great. So if they blow themselves up and they kill some people in a Western country, they can achieve a level of fame and celebrity and notoriety that would be impossible. If you notice, in the I guess they called it a lorry attack in Nice, the guy was like a bisexual bodybuilder, narcissistic type. So if you think about narcissism, blowing yourself up is kind of a narcissistic way to end your life. I mean, if you're really suicidal, that's kind of then just go kill yourself. But these people have to make these grand murderous gestures. So I believe that if you are interested in traveling to some of these countries, if you're interested to visit London or visit Paris, you should do it sooner rather than later, because this problem will only grow, and it'll grow much faster in Europe than it will in the United States. If you have an unassimilated population that's growing much faster than the native population, the country itself, we're talking France or the United Kingdom on a lesser extent, but the country itself will start to gain kind of a Muslim political flavor, and there's no maybe there's one, but there's not very many Muslim countries that have democracy. So it'll be hard in my opinion, it'll be hard for these countries to hang on to their personal freedoms and liberty, whatever that they have left, in the face of a growing Muslim population. For instance, if you have to respect religious law like Sharia law in your country, that flies in the face of a lot of Western quote-unquote values. Now, I don't know if countries in Europe, if those people actually believe in Western values, or if they know what they believe in. But if they do not hold their political leaders accountable, then they will be in a country that they don't recognize in a generation. And here in the United States, the president, who's the first president to take this seriously in the last decade, is facing a political assassination attempt by the media. Trump has been facing anonymously sourced material. He's been facing allegations, rumors, everything but evidence that he and his campaign were in collusion with the Russians. Any contact that anyone in his campaign had with anybody in Russia has been picked apart and suspect. Now, when you're going to run a country, it makes sense that you would reach out to your country's allies, some of its adversaries, just to start talking. In most countries, when the president or when their elected leader wins an election, that government is switched over almost immediately. In the United States, it takes 4 months. So Barack Obama had 4 months to undermine Donald Trump's presidency. He's been a president for a month, and it's come to light that that Barack Obama was spying on the Trump campaign and disseminating that information. The media is pushing a narrative that the Russians helped Trump win by exposing the truth about the DNC. That is the best that they have right now. Meanwhile, the Donald is on a vast diplomatic tour of the world. He's touring. He's toured the Middle East, signing some huge deal with the Saudis, who may or may not have financed 9/11. But the Donald, to his credit, took his wife with him and a female translator who was translating between him and the king of Saudi Arabia. And the female translator did not have to wrap her head up. So she wasn't in a burqa, she wasn't wrapped up, and the Donald decided to, I'm pretty sure on purpose, to put a woman right there next to him and the king. And he refused any kind of a bow at all. Now, when Obama went to Saudi Arabia, it served as a vast apology tour for all of the ills and all of the racism and all of the Islamophobia that the Americans have. It was basically a big apology. And when Donald Trump goes to Saudi Arabia, he goes like a big swinging dick. America first or Trump first, I'm not sure, but it's America first, Trump second, Trump first, America second. But he goes over there and he kind of doesn't give a shit about their sensibilities. The women that are traveling with him go over in accordance with Western standards, and Donald kind of tells them what he thinks. Donald says that Muslim nations need to work together to fight terrorism, and Muslim leaders need to honestly confront extremism within their countries, which I don't know if that was a little bit tongue-in-cheek, because many of these regimes are extremist. If you look at Saudi Arabia has some of the worst treatment of women on the face of the earth. Women aren't allowed to drive. They're not allowed to go outside and shop without a male relative. Gay rights are non-existent. Being gay is illegal. And I personally question our allegiance to the Saudis. Like, why? It must come down to oil. So that's why I'm hoping that we can really get off to stuff, because the way that people are treated, just regular people are treated in Middle Eastern countries, by and large is abhorrent. Human rights, I mean, the only human rights that probably exist in Israel. Now, Donald was in front of this huge NATO building in Brussels, and he delivered this really funny speech. I have a few excerpts. Now, the NATO guy, Jens Stoltenberg, mentions Article 5 about 6 times in his introduction of Donald Trump. Now, the introduction lasted about a minute, and he talks about Article 5 about 5 times. Article 5 is the pact that the NATO nations have with the United States, and the pact really is that Europe can do whatever the hell they want with regards to their defense, and the United States will just step in. Now, if I was a European leader, I would say, well, what if you get some crazy president in the United States that isn't going to back up the NATO agreement, kind of like what Obama did with regards to Ukraine. Obama's kind of just decided to let Russia take half of Ukraine without any kind of a pushback, which is kind of why I thought it was funny that Russia is considered to be on the same side as Trump in the media, when Obama did nothing to counter Russia in Europe. Russia grew effectively while Barack Obama was president. So Trump is in front of NATO, and I think we need to get used to seeing the Donald on the world stage, because sometimes it's a little bit cringeworthy and off the cuff. The Donald opened his remarks in front of the NATO building in Brussels with a moment of silence in regards to the Manchester terrorist attack at the Ariana Grande concert, and he has this to say about the terrorists.
and vicious attack upon our civilization. All people who cherish life must unite in finding, exposing, and removing these killers and extremists. And yes, losers. They are losers. Wherever they...
Now, any student of the Donald can see when he goes off of his prepared remarks. I think he has a speechwriter write all this stuff for NATO, and then he the real gem is when he says when he calls the terrorists losers, which they are losers. They're losers because they have no ability to get notoriety, success without killing themselves. So it really is, in a sense, very uncreative to blow yourself up at an Ariana Grande concert. And I just noticed at this speech that Trudeau is there, and Trudeau's the guy that famously took umbrage with the Canadian manual talking about how genital mutilation was evil or some such thing. And Trudeau, not in his current post, but in his previous political post, had taken offense to that. And he's there. And here's the Donald talking about terrorism.
And thousands of people pouring into our various countries and spreading throughout. And in many cases, we have no idea who they are. We must be tough, we must be strong, and we must be vigilant. The NATO of the future must include a great focus on terrorism.
Now, they don't like to hear that. The political elite in Europe has absolutely no problem importing Muslim extremists into their country. The London mayor famously said that terrorist attacks are just going to become a way of life in any large city. Well, I don't want to live in a large city that has terrorist attacks every once in a while. I want to live in a peaceful society where terrorist losers don't fling nails at children. Now, this is, I think, having Donald Trump as president is probably the first time I've ever heard that the NATO alliance had strings attached to it in their founding documents. NATO alliance members are supposed to dedicate 2% of their GDP, roughly, towards defense spending, and Donald Trump calls them out on it.
These grave security concerns are the same reason that I have been very, very direct with Secretary Stoltenberg and members of the alliance in saying that NATO members must finally contribute their fair share and meet their financial obligations. But 23 of the 28 member nations are still not paying what they should be paying and what they are supposed to be paying for their defense. This is not fair to the people and taxpayers of the United States. And many of these nations owe massive amounts of money from past years and not paying.
Now, what the Donald was talking about is basically a wealth transfer to Europe. And I can see why a liberal president like Barack Obama would not want to call out NATO in this regard. Number one, he doesn't care. Money is just, I don't know. On the left, government finances are like not rigid. You can find money for everything. Millions and millions of dollars for billions of dollars for all kinds of research and all kinds of boondoggles, everything under the sun. So, of course, Obama's not going to go to Europe and harp over a couple $100 billion. But if you think about it, the American taxpayer is basically funding the vast welfare state in Europe, not directly, but by defending them from Russia. And make no mistake, Putin wants to expand. I mean, he would expand Russia to well past Poland if he could. So the United States is the only thing, and the United States commitment is the only thing keeping Europe this kind of socialist fairyland. And even now, it's not even the welfare state is being expanded towards all kinds of Muslim refugees, and the character of the countries will be greatly changed.
States spend more on defense than all other NATO countries combined. If all NATO members had spent just 2% of their GDP on defense last year, we would have had another $119 billion for...
And the new French president is like giggling while he's saying this. He's like, who is this fat bloated American talking about?
For our collective defense and for the financing of additional NATO reserves. We should recognize that with these chronic underpayments and growing threats, even 2% of GDP is insufficient to close the gaps in modernizing.
Fuck you, America.
Readiness and the size of forces. We have to make up for the many years lost. 2% is the bare minimum for confronting today's very real and very vicious threats. If NATO countries made their full and complete contributions, then NATO would be even stronger than it is today, especially from the threat of terrorism. I want to extend my appreciation to the 9/11 Memorial and Museum in New York for contributing this remnant of the North Tower, as well as to Chancellor Merkel and the German people for donating this portion of the Berlin Wall. It is truly fitting that these two artifacts now reside here so close together at the new NATO headquarters. And I never asked once what the new...
Now, Trump kind of reminds me of Teddy Roosevelt. Teddy Roosevelt was speak softly and carry a big stick. I think Donald Trump is speak loudly and carry a big stick.
New NATO headquarters cost. I refuse to do that. But it is beautiful. Each one marks a pivotal event.
Now, Donald Trump was a real estate developer in another lifetime, and he sees this huge, cavernous, hundreds of millions of dollar building in Brussels. Now, Belgium itself is a huge benefactor of the administrative state in Europe. The NATO headquarters is there, and then over in the Netherlands, they've got the EU headquarters, and from there, Europe is like governed. But Trump sees this building, and he's like, well, we kind of paid for this shit. Now, what are they doing in here? I mean, the NATO agreement is basically if Europe or the United States is attacked, well, basically, if Europe's attacked, the United States will come to their effort. If the United States is attacked, the United States will come to their effort, because Europe doesn't have very much of a military capability. So what is why does NATO need a giant cavernous building? I mean, it's probably for various research and all these nonsensical things that huge bureaucracies do. They all have positions that they justify through various means, and nothing really gets done at all.
In the history of this alliance and in the eternal battle between good and evil. On one side, a testament to the triumph of our ideals over a totalitarian communist ideology bent on the oppression of millions and millions of people. On the other, a painful reminder of the barbaric evil that still exists in the world and that we must confront and defeat together as a group, as a world. This twisted mass of metal reminds us not only of what we have lost, but also what forever endures. The courage of our people, the strength of our resolve, and the commitments that bind us together as one.
Yeah, none of them like him. I can tell you, just by reading their expressions, Frau Merkel is like, get me out of here. The French guy is like, who is this asshole? Who is this asshole? What is he talking about? We're not spending more money. Now, there was a report in Montana of there's a special election there, a congressional election for a House seat. It's let's see, this Republican Greg Gianforte allegedly beat up a reporter. Apparently, the reporter stormed into a conference room that he was in, allegedly, and the Republican candidate Greg Gianforte kicked him out, like physically kicked him out. And the guy still won, which I think is kind of funny. I wonder if Greg Gianforte can convince the Donald to have this reporter waterboarded. Now, the Democrat candidate that Gianforte beat was Rob Quist. He was a cowboy hat wearing musician, and I don't know if Donald's going to have Rob Quist waterboarded or not, but we shall see. Now, Trump received some criticism when he was in Brussels about not talking about Article 5, which is the promise that America or Europe will come to each other's, and Canada will come to each other's, just America really, I mean Canada, whatever, will come to Europe's defense if they're ever attacked. And I personally think that it was kind of leverage, like, to get them to pay up a little, so we can stop supporting their vast administrative state. Now, I'm kind of wondering whether the assault in Montana actually helped the Montana candidate win, or whether it was a negative for the candidate. I think most people, when they think about Montana, it's like another country. I wonder if most Americans would feel more out of place in Montana or like Paris. Now, Trump, for in Trump's credit, he actually assaulted a world leader in NATO. He shoved the Montenegro prime minister. Now, I think the Montenegro prime minister was just kind of a collateral damage. Trump was trying to get to the front of a pack of world leaders. The Montenegro prime minister was in his way, and Trump probably figures we're paying for the defense. I should be ahead of all of these nincompoops. I should be leading this group of Europeans, and he kind of coyly adjusts his jacket and act like nothing just happened, and just starts like, oh well, this building is $100 million. Look at this rafter, blah blah blah. I would have done it this way, or whatever he started saying. But it was pretty funny, and I think America always does this. We have kind of a pussy president in Obama. He's kind of a little bit of a bitch, and then we kind of overshot a little in Trump. We got like this kind of like swinging dick. So I wonder if our next president is going to be like more even keeled, somewhere in the middle. So I want to thank you guys for listening to Jeff Danger Radio. Please feel free to email me, send me like any kind of critical emails. Just send them right to jeffdangerradio@gmail.com. I want to thank you guys for listening, and I hope you have a lovely Memorial Day weekend. Hopefully it doesn't rain during your barbecue.